One. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our 12th Ask Me Anything live video series. If you missed the 11th Ask Me Anything on the racist underpinnings of immigration law, you can still see it on Highest Pennsylvania's YouTube page, on our website at www.highestpa.org, and in the video section of Highest PA's Facebook page. My name is Catherine Miller Wilson. I'm the Executive Director of Highest Pennsylvania, a nonprofit whose mission is to provide legal and social services to immigrants and refugees. Today, our conversation will focus on citizenship delayed, naturalization, and voting for new Americans. With Election Day coming up just around the corner, we wanted to talk about what it takes in this day and age for an immigrant to become a citizen and how they can take advantage of that right. Thank you to everyone who submitted questions already. We're excited for your conversation today. If you haven't already done so, please submit any questions you have during the next half hour or so in the comments section below. Please keep your questions general. If you need specific legal questions or legal representation, please contact Highest Pennsylvania, as we cannot give legal advice on Facebook Live. If we don't get to them, to any of the general questions during this live conversation, we'll answer them in the comments. We'd also love to hear your ideas on topics for future videos. We hope that through this video series, you can ask any questions you have and learn the truth about immigration and refugee resettlement in the U.S. Today, as part of Welcoming Week, we are excited to be speaking about citizenship and voting with Lori Alexander, Mary Clark, and Symbol Lai. Lori is the director of the Citizenship and Family Unification Program at Highest Pennsylvania. Mary is the Philadelphia Citizenship Action Network coordinator at Highest PA. Both Lori and Mary provide direct legal representation to low-income immigrants who are eligible to naturalize, and they're well-known experts in naturalization law. Symbol Lai is the Deputy Director of the City of Philadelphia's Office of Immigrant Affairs. So I'm going to start with some questions from me. How does someone become a citizen, Lori?
Okay, I want to give you the basic requirements to be able to apply for citizenship. First of all, an applicant has to be 18 years old or older. They must have their permanent resident status. That means their green card for 5 years. There are exceptions for people who are married for 3 years to a U.S. citizen, where they only have to wait 3 years. If you're not sure exactly what your date of residence is, look at the green card. It says right on there, resident since. That's the date you use for counting the 5 years. There are a lot of other smaller residence requirements determining how much travel time you can have out of the country. I'm not going to go into all those details now, but just to be aware that if you have traveled extensively in the last 5 years, you might not be eligible right away. You need to get that checked. An important requirement is English. The law says you must have basic knowledge to be able to speak, understand, read, and write simple English. It's not defined exactly what simple or basic English is, but you need to be able to write down a sentence that's dictated to you, such as the president lives in the White House, or the flag is red, white, and blue. Doesn't have to be written absolutely perfectly. You can have a few mistakes here or there, but if there's too many mistakes, such as in every single word in the sentence, that might not be enough. So you're given 3 chances to write a sentence that's dictated. You're also asked to read a sentence just similar to what I just said from a piece of paper. Read it out loud. That's the main part of the test. Just speaking to the applicant during the interview, the officer can see if they understand and speak enough English to become a citizen. So that's very important. We get a lot of questions. What about I haven't learned enough English, I can't read and write? Are there any exceptions? There are some exceptions. The main exceptions depend on the length of time you have your green card and your age. So the first exception, if someone is 55 years old or older and has their permanent resident status for 15 years or more, they are allowed to do their entire interview with an interpreter and will not be required to read or write English or speak or understand. plus the civics test, which I'm going to talk about in just a second, can be done also with an interpreter. So that's 55 years old, 15 years green card. A similar exception is if you're 50 years old, you could be a little bit younger, but you have to have your green card 20 years in that case. And for those 65 years old, there are some special exceptions for having to do less history questions if you have the green card for 20 years. So those are the main ones. There are also one other group of exceptions for people who have severe medical problems, physical or mental impairments that would prevent them from being able to learn the language or the civics, things that affect memory, things that affect cognition. It has to be pretty serious problems. The doctor will have to fill out a special form explaining what these issues are, and then immigration will make a decision whether they find that's an acceptable reason to make an exception. They're very tough on these, so this should only be used as a last resort for people who have very serious issues. One other major requirement, you have to show for the last 5 years you've been a person of good moral character. So there are a number of questions on the applications that deal with this issue, such as your tax record, your immigration record. Have you had any police problems? Do you pay child support? There are quite a number of things on there dealing with good moral character. They're looking at the 5 years before application. They can go back and look further, but the main time period that they're concerned about is that 5-year period. And then the final requirement is you have to be willing to take an oath of allegiance to America, to swear your loyalty and go to an oath ceremony and swear your allegiance to the country. So those are the basic requirements. There's a lot more detail, but we're not going to go into everything right now. But if you have questions, feel free to put them in the comments and we'll be glad to answer them.
Thank you, Lori. That's very helpful. And Mary, maybe you can tell us, how much does it cost to apply for citizenship?
So right now, it costs $725 for someone to apply for citizenship. That includes a $640 application fee and then an $85 biometrics fee to get your fingerprints and your photo taken. There are ways that you can get a fee waiver. So there's 3 ways to get a fee waiver whereby you pay nothing for your application. The first way to get it is if your household income is at or below 150% of the federal poverty level. For example, a family of 3 would need to make less than $33,000 between everyone in the family to be able to be eligible under that prong. The second way is if you receive a means-tested benefit. So someone who receives medical assistance or food stamps, they would be eligible to not have to pay for the application. And finally, if someone is experiencing a financial hardship, such as homelessness or bankruptcy, they may be eligible to apply for a fee waiver based on that. There's also something called a reduced fee waiver, whereby you would be eligible to pay $405 instead of the full $725. And that's if you can demonstrate that your household income is below 200% of the federal poverty level. Now, I say now because beginning next month, starting October 2nd, there's going to be fee increases and the elimination of fee waivers for many immigration applications, including citizenship. So citizenship specifically is going to go up to $1,170, which is an over 83% increase over the current price, which is already expensive to begin with. But in particular, what's going to affect most of our clients is that fee waivers are going to be going away for most individuals. So if someone is unemployed due to the pandemic, if a family doesn't have any income besides benefits coming into the house, they're not going to be eligible for a fee waiver anymore in most cases, and they will have to save that $1,170 to be able to apply for citizenship. So applications postmarked on or after October 2nd are going to be required to pay the new fees and are going to fall under the new fee rule. So if anyone is, pulling together their application and waiting to send it, you have really only a couple more weeks in which you can get under the old fee rules.
So thank you. That's really distressing to hear. So basically, just to clarify, you are not eligible to vote at all until you become a citizen. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. In the U.S., you have to be a U.S. citizen to vote. Yeah.
So what those new fees will do is prevent any immigrants who cannot afford to access the benefit that they are eligible for under our laws if they can't pay the fees.
That's exactly what it means. Yeah.
Right. So it's the very definition of lack of access to justice. So it's very, very concerning. There is some litigation, as I understand it, that is pending that's challenging the implementation of those rules, but we don't know what the outcome of that will be. And meantime, the implementation date is currently, as Mary suggested, 2 weeks from now. So it's very, very concerning. So Lori, we've heard a lot in other Ask Me Anythings as well as just in headlines about delays in the court system. How long does someone have to wait to become a citizen?
Yeah, it depends on what immigration office you're going to be interviewed at. In Philadelphia, currently it's taking between 12 and a half to 20 and a half months to get an interview from the time you file. Early this year, it had been up to 36 months, so it's slightly less, but these are estimates. It could be less if you're very lucky. It could also be more, and these dates change according to the volume of applications. Knowing that the fees are going up and the fee waivers are going to be taken away, I anticipate that this month there's going to be a heavy volume of filing, which could create even more delays than they were before. These delays have been building up in the last year. The processing times have been growing and growing, and with the pandemic, it put an even bigger strain on the system, making it slower. Threats of furloughs by immigration and reduction of staff has reduced processing. So this is a very rough estimate. I would not figure less than a year to get an interview. So do it as soon as you can.
Thank you. Very distressing.
Yeah.
So, Mary, can all immigrants become citizens?
So no. So the first step before you can become a citizen is, as Lori was saying before, you have to have a green card. You have to be what's called a lawful permanent resident. And not everyone is eligible to become a lawful permanent resident. There's certain pathways by which you can get a green card. One of the main ones is a family-based petition. So if you have a family member who is a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, they may be eligible to file a petition so that you can get a green card of your own. There are certain restrictions on who can apply, but in general, family-based is the most common way that someone can get a green card. You can also get it through your employer. So your employer can also file a petition for you. Depending on the type of job and your immigration history, you may be eligible for an employment-based green card. And then there's green cards for refugees. So refugee is someone who has a well-founded fear of persecution in their home country based on either their race, religion, national origin, political opinion, or membership in a particular group. Individuals who come to the U.S. as refugees can apply for a green card after they've lived in the U.S. for 1 year. Similarly, individuals who've been granted asylum after coming to the U.S. or at ports of entry in the U.S. Can apply for a green card after 1 year. Then there are other humanitarian categories whereby individuals who gain immigration status in those categories can get a green card and then eventually become citizens. And this would include individuals who've been victims of domestic violence, individuals who've been victims of certain crimes, of human trafficking, unaccompanied children. Those individuals will be eligible to get on the pathway to citizenship. This is not an exhaustive list, and like I said, for all of these individuals, once they receive their green card, then they get on the pathway to become U.S. citizens and have to wait a certain number of years and go through the different requirements that Lori mentioned. But it's important to note that there's not a path to a green card for all immigrants. Under our current rules, there's not simply a pathway for everyone and not everyone's eligible. So when you hear people say comments like get to the back of the line, for some people there simply is no line.
Thanks. And when can new citizens register to vote, Lori?
Okay, after somebody is interviewed for their citizenship, they have the test where they're checked on the English language. I forgot to mention, I'll mention it now, that there's a civics requirement that all prospective citizens have to learn 100 questions about American history and government. Some of them are easy, like who's the president of the United States. Others are more difficult, like, well, what year was the Constitution signed? There's, a variety of questions. They're asked 10 questions. They've got to get 6 of those right. So that's one of the requirements, I'm sorry, that I didn't mention. So once they go through the interview, they pass the civics, they pass the English, they have no obstacles on their application, they will be scheduled for a swearing-in ceremony, we call an oath ceremony. Sometimes they're given to the person right away, which is happening at the moment in some cases, but generally people wait 1 to 2 months from their interview date to the swearing in. So until that second step happens and they get sworn in, they are not citizens, even if they pass their test. But the moment they have their ceremony, they're handed their certificate of naturalization at that time, and they can immediately, that moment, register to vote. So there's no waiting time. Once you become a citizen, you can do it immediately. You should do it immediately. If you register online to vote, Simbal is going to tell us more details about registration and all, just to know that October 19th is the last day to register online. So if you know somebody or you are getting sworn in the next few weeks or so, you still are fine to register. Okay, so I'm going to leave that part to Simbal to give us more details on that.
Great, thank you. And I guess I'm going to end my question for Mary and Lori with a question for Mary. Is there any idea, or do you have any idea of how many immigrants haven't been able to become citizens in time to vote in the election because of delays?
So yeah, so as of March 31st, which is the last date for which we have information from or data from the Department of Homeland Security, so as of March 31st, there were more than 700,000 people nationwide who had pending naturalization applications. Wow. So that was before most of the coronavirus-related shutdowns, right? USCIS shut down for interviews and naturalization ceremonies on March 18th. So this was a little less than 2 weeks after that. There were already 700,000 pending NATS applications, meaning people who had already applied and were just waiting for their interviews and their ceremonies, assuming they got approved. So between March 18th and June 4th, USCIS was completely shut down to any in-person interviews and ceremonies. As of June 4th, they started slowly opening back up. They started with ceremonies. They caught up on any canceled and rescheduled ceremonies, and they're now also doing interviews. But obviously, given the safety precautions, they're doing those at a lesser extent than they were doing before the pandemic. So there are less interviews happening each day. There are less swearing-in ceremonies than there were in the past. So as Lori mentioned, before the shutdown, processing times in Philadelphia for citizenship cases were about 7 to 8 months. Currently, like she said, it's between 12.5 months and 20 months. So what we're seeing is applicants who applied last October are finally getting interview dates, and they're getting interview dates for October of this year. So we are seeing that it's about a full year for folks. According to the Department of Homeland Security, they say that they are on track to naturalize 600,000 individuals this fiscal year, which ends at the end of September. So to give you sort of a contrast, in fiscal year 2019, they naturalized over 800,000 individuals. And this year, which is an election year, and we assume that more applications were probably submitted, over 200,000 less individuals are expected to be naturalized. And that's based on DHS's own numbers. It's important to note that the processing delays are not just COVID related. So obviously I gave you the perspective that March 31st was when the pandemic had just started. But also this is a trend we've been seeing for the last 4 years. And naturalization processing times have doubled over those last 4 years. So in fiscal year 2016, processing times nationwide were about 5.5 months. In fiscal year 17, they jumped to 8 months. In fiscal year 18, it was jumped all the way to 10. And in fiscal year 19, it was just a little less than 10. So this was all pre-pandemic, and we were seeing these processing delays really just ballooning. Part of that are budget and staffing constraints, but also some of the new regulations that the administration has put into play and ways that the process has become more complicated and more time consuming, both for applicants as well as the USCIS officers adjudicating these cases. So lots of folks who applied to naturalize near the end of last year, fully expecting the process to go through, to get their interviews and to be sworn in time to vote for in the November elections, are just not seeing that happen. And as Lori said, in Pennsylvania, you have to be registered to vote by October 19th to be able to vote in the November election. That means that for naturalization applicants, they have to have their interview and their swearing-in ceremony happen by the 19th in order to be eligible to vote. And for hundreds of thousands of individuals across the country, it's just not going to happen.
So thank you. It's, you know, I hate to end on a negative note, but of course we're not ending. I'm going to turn this over to Symbol Lai. But before I do, just to really put this in stark relief, we have seen a steady and increasing amount of disenfranchisement that's happening on a massive scale. People who are eligible to naturalize, who are contributing, who are paying taxes. And just to make that really, really clear, they are paying taxes to the federal government to pay for all kinds of things, but they are not allowed to vote because of the changes in regulations that have caused enormous delays and have resulted in people not being able to get their petitions processed or their oath ceremonies take place in time. So,
and if I could add, it's just going to get so much worse with low-income people being unable to get fee waivers and to afford the filing fee. So it's going to be much, much worse as time goes on.
Right. So it continues. So on that distressing note, I want to turn it over to Symbol Lai. Again, she's from the Philadelphia Office of Immigrant Affairs, and she's going to talk to us about the process of voting for new American citizens. So thanks for joining us, Symbol. And again, I want to start with questions from us. What is the process for registering to vote for new American citizens?
Awesome. Thanks, Kathy. I'm so glad that you guys organized this and are starting this conversation. I am going to go ahead and share my screen because the process is it's kind of complicated right now, and what I want to do is I want to point folks who are watching to the mouthpieces, the official mouthpieces of where they can get vetted, up-to-date information about the upcoming election. And so very quickly, this is our office. We're the City of Philadelphia Office of Immigrant Affairs. I have the website, our Facebook and Twitter on here for you guys to follow. If you guys want to, if you're ever curious about what we're up to, this is the best way to kind of keep along. And before I jump to the question about registering to vote, I want to give a couple of a very important FYI. So again, the Office of Immigrant Affairs, OIA, we're not in charge of the operations of the election. So we don't actually, we can facilitate, we can point you to the right direction and everything if you have specific questions about voter registration, mail-in voting, but the official entity in the city that is working on the election is the City Commissioner's Office, and then also the Pennsylvania State Department of State. So right now, the reason why I wanted to do these slides is because we have the links to these entities for which can kind of give you the information about the latest information about the election. And I would say that a lot of things are kind of changing as we speak. So if you have any questions, go ahead and check those sites frequently. So without further ado, Kathy, your first question is, how do you register to vote? So we have two links here. One is to the Pennsylvania Voter Services, and the other one is to the City Commissioner's website. They have a tab that goes under vote that clicks to voters and then registering to vote. And in that link, you can get a quick, you can get shot over to the voter registration process.
And just Symbol, I'm sorry to interrupt, but just so our listeners know, we will be posting these links on our Facebook page after this is over, so you don't need to rush to write this down.
Right. And the most important thing to know is that the deadline to vote in this upcoming election, which is very important, election date is November 3rd. The last day to register to vote is October 19th. So along with the two sites and the deadline for how do you register to vote, the ways that you can register is you can complete the voter registration on the website, or you can deliver a paper copy of the voter registration form to the county registration office. And that is the snail mail address to the local registration office could be found on the city commissioner's website. There is a typo. It's not county. I'm sorry about that. Or you can also go into the voter registration office to fill out a registration form. The deadline again is I'm going to keep repeating these deadlines because they're very important, and so hopefully folks kind of remember. The deadline to register to vote is October 19th. I would not delay your voter registration. You can do it today on the website.
Great.
Okay. Kathy, do you want to take it away and prime for the next question?
Yes. So are there any alternatives to voting in person? Oh,
yes.
Sorry, I skipped a question. Is there still time to register to vote before the November 3rd election?
Yes, there is still time. We have until October 19th, so a little bit more than a month. However, I would, register to vote immediately and stuff as soon as you know and everything, because you just want to make sure everything's getting through and stuff, and it's an important why wait.
Right. Okay, great. And so now my question, are there alternatives to voting in person? Sorry.
Yes. So there are alternatives. You can request a mail-in ballot by mail, and also when you register to vote, I believe there's a section that you can complete to request a mail-in ballot. The deadline to complete this is separate from the voter registration. So say if you're already registered and everything and you want a mail-in ballot, you have to apply for this mail-in ballot by October 27th by 5 p.m. So that means, and postmarks are not honored. So I would get in the application to mail in, fill out the application for a mail-in ballot today if you can and stuff, and just get that over with and get that in way before that October 27th deadline. The postmarks are not monitored thing. I would check back again to the city commissioner's website and everything from the most frequent, the most up-to-date information. But just know that right now it is October 27th at 5 p.m. And also, if you're ever confused about whether or not your voter registration is received or if your mail-in ballot, application is received and what the status is, there is a link in the PA Voter Services to track your ballot applications.
Great.
Okay.
Okay. If someone has never voted before, so this is their first election, what are some things they should know?
Well, first of all, I would congratulate you. It's probably the best thing about getting your citizenship is that you get to participate in these national conversations that are very, very important. And so, just savor all that, the importance of what you're doing. The first thing you should know is those deadlines, the October 19th and October 27th, where you can get this information, the PA Department of State and also the city commissioners. But then also I would, another good resource is the City of Philadelphia Vote by Mail Guides. And this is the site here will take you to the City of Philadelphia site that kind of boils down all the information that I've given you and just walks you through that process a little bit more. And especially for first-time voters, if English is not your first language or you'd rather work in you feel like you're more comfortable in your native language, the Vote by Mail Guide is available in 5 languages right now. And those are English, Spanish, Simplified Chinese, Vietnamese, and French. And not only, the site is really, really important, not only because it's translated, but it offers, again, lists the important dates that I talked about. It gives, has information on the candidates on the ballot and the ballot questions. that are up for, local charter changes, for example, that might be up for vote and everything in the upcoming election. And it also is a good way to kind of get the information for the local election offices. And so this is an invaluable resource for first-time voters.
Great.
I have a little bit more. Can I jump a little bit more into another resources for first-time voter?
Yeah,
okay.
No, this is great. Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I wanted to include is that, especially for mail-in ballots, the site actually includes pictures that we developed, that we as an office helped develop, that teaches people how to exactly to vote by mail. So it can be kind of complicated if you've never voted before, how to fill out the bubbles, how to write in, where you need to write in the candidate's name, what envelope to put the ballot in, and where you need to sign it. All of this stuff is broken down to in pictures, in addition to being available in different languages. And I think that is really important. The OIA, alongside other city departments and everything, we worked on kind of testing the usability of the mailing guide, the vote by mail guides. And we worked with people who didn't speak, who were limited English proficient, to kind of to gauge their responses in how usable the city's vote by mail guides are. And so this is why, I kind of wanted to spend a little bit more time on this, because it is, it facilitates voting by the process of voting by mail for the first time, especially if you're not comfortable in English. I would also say that you would please check back the site, the phila.gov vote by mail site, frequently, because it's likely to, we may be adding more languages in the near future.
That's wonderful. And I see you have a long list here: Arabic, Russian, Haitian Creole, Portuguese, Korean, Khmer, and Indonesian.
Yes, they are coming. So please check back frequently to the sites that I think are being dropped into the comment section.
And I assume it goes without saying that you have Spanish.
Yes,
right?
yes. So we have, in my previous slide, the site is already up in the 5 languages. There's more coming, so just keep checking back.
Great. Okay, so that brings us to my last question. What resources are available for people who might not know how to start the voter registration process?
I would start with the city website, start with the city commissioner website, or also the PA Department of State website to look at the voter registration form. And that would be the first place to start. If you're limited English proficient and stuff, I would start with the city site to see if it's something that, because it is translated in different languages, and they have a pretty clear guide on how to, the steps and everything and how to get registered, and they'll shoot you directly to the source for you to fill out the form to get registered right away. I did want to kind of throw out there that election day is November 3rd, and if you are mailing in the ballot, if you're completing a mail-in ballot, you have to send in the ballot. The ballot has to be received by 8 p.m. on November 3rd. And again, like the mail-in ballot application that's due October 27th, postmarks are not honored for this right now.
Symbol, Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
If you've registered for a mail-in ballot online, do you know when those ballots are going to be sent out to people?
The best way to get a hold of this information is a couple slides back. There is a site right here, the PA Voter Services. They have a ballot tracker. So if you go to the website and everything, you can track the status of your application for a mail-in ballot there.
No, I know the application was approved, but when are the actual ballots going out in the mail to people?
I am not sure about that. Again, that stuff is information that should be found in the state office
Okay.
or the city commissioners.
Okay, because I hadn't heard anything yet, so I didn't know if they started.
Yeah, I think the three sources where you can get the best information and most up-to-date information are the city commissioners, the state site, and then also the city's website, the city general election guide.
Great, thank you.
Of course. That's a great question.
Yeah, really good question. So I think I want to go back, Symbol, if you can go back to your last slide,
Yes.
that again, election day is November 3rd. And I noticed you have this phrase that I've heard a lot, making a voting plan. So make a voting plan. What do we mean by that? You want to talk a little bit about what that means?
I think for me, making a voting plan just means knowing exactly how I'm going to vote. What are the steps to getting voting, to vote in this next, general election, and just and then doing it, basically, is to execute, right? So the three big deadlines are October 19th, October 27th, if you're going to do a mail-in ballot, and then the election day is November 3rd, right? And so you just want to make sure that you're hitting those marks, especially if I know right now everyone, is quarantining at home, avoiding going out in public in large spaces. Folks that may have different risk levels to COVID-19. So if you know that that's the case and everything, then maybe plan to hit that mark to request a mail-in ballot on October 27th, right? Before October 27th, right?
Long before, right?
Yes, long before and everything, because again, there's the 8 p.m. The postmarks are not honored and everything, and we don't know if that's going to change. But let's just go from the information that we have right now. So if we're going to do a voting plan based on this information, let's just do it now. Turn things in early. Let's not leave anything up to the faith or chances and everything, and let's just get this stuff in.
Great. Well, that's wonderful to hear. I know I have a voting plan. I even have two plans because
Yes.
I changed my mind. My original voting plan was to vote by mail, and I started to fill out to get a mail-in ballot. But as time went on, I personally got more worried about the mail. And my polling place is someplace, of course, that I go to every single year. And I am fortunate that it is never crowded. And so I decided that I was less concerned about COVID risk. And so my voting plan is to go in person. But certainly, as we've discussed today, there are alternatives. And the most important thing, as Symbol said, is to have a plan and to execute it quickly. So.
Yes.
But I think you should also have a backup plan because, I'm waiting for my mail-in ballot to come. The Postal Service is working so slowly. So if I don't get it till like mid-October or something, and I'm concerned they might not get back, be received by November 3rd, I can still go to my poll, I believe, and vote in person. The system will not allow me to do it both ways, but I don't think you're stopped from doing that if you decide not to use your mail-in ballot after all.
That's correct. As long as you haven't used your mail-in ballot, there's nothing to prevent you from voting in person. And so that's good. I'm glad you raised that, Lori, because I think in this weird time that we're in with the pandemic and various crises along the country, it is important to have a plan and a backup plan. So,
Yes.
So having said that, I think I just am ready to wrap up unless anybody has any final comments. Okay.
No, I just want to say thank you for doing this. I think it's really important to get the word out and to get those deadlines on people's radar way in advance.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, it's really important. An interesting statistic that I read about, the United States' voting rate generally of people eligible to vote is something like 50%. And in all other democratic countries, it's closer to 70 and 80%. So that is a pretty shocking statistic. Our democracy is only as good as we, the people, can make it. So it is critical that everybody make a voting plan and a backup plan and execute it immediately. Thank you. So thank you, Lori, Mary, and Symbol, for all of your enlightening answers. We are, of course, out of time. For all of you who sent questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, they will be answered in the comments below. And of course, just a reminder, if you have a very specific question and need legal advice, please feel free to call Highest Pennsylvania. We are open for business. We're just working remotely. And so you can call us at 215-832-0900 and ask your question, and we'll connect you to a legal expert if you need direct assistance. Stay tuned for Highest Pennsylvania's next Ask Me Anything, which is scheduled for October 21st at 4:30 p.m., when we will be discussing the Immigration Hub's action steps for real immigration reform. Immigration reform is something that I think you all know has been on everyone's minds. And so the Immigration Hub has laid out a very detailed plan. And so we're going to discuss it during that Ask Me Anything. As always, you can learn more about how to support DACA recipients, asylum seekers, those seeking to naturalize, and other immigrants and refugees at www.highestpa.org. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Bye-bye. Go out and vote.